Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to talk about what type of trucks should you put on your old school or shape board, and does the size and the brand matter? So starting off with the size, it's going to really depend on the shape of your board. So if you have a 10-inch deck, putting 10-inch trucks on it may not be a good idea in a lot of cases. So many shape boards taper at certain points, and you may see this in a lot of old school decks where the front of the board is very wide, but then towards the end of the board it tapers into a much narrower measurement. And when boards like this are measured, only the widest point of that board is listed, not any of the actual measurements. So if you have a board with like a crazy taper and a crazy shape and it's various sizes along the measurements, only the widest point of that board is going to be listed as the size of that board. Now the measurement you should be aware of is the area where your truck hanger is going to be. So that specific area is going to determine what size trucks you need for that certain deck. So for example, this Peralta Steve size reissue is listed as a 10-inch deck. However, putting 10-inch trucks on this deck is not the greatest idea. The 10 inches is listed as the widest point of that deck, but the area where the hanger would actually be is much less than 10 inches. Now it's been a while since I've measured this deck and I don't have the exact measurements, but the front area where that hanger is around 9 inches or so, while the back where that hanger would be is around 8.5 inches to 8.75 inches. Now in my personal experience, I found that putting 8.75 inch truck was the best match for this deck because of that certain shape. Now if you need to hear it from a pro skater, Eric Winkowski actually skates this very similar setup, in which his pro model is a 10-inch wide board, but his truck choice is 8.25 trucks, and which you can see in this video right here.
I'm Eric Winkowski, these are my Indies. Yeah, 159s, you said it, and yeah, they don't stick out. That's pretty much why 169 is too big.
And it's for the same reasons, in which that area where the hanger is going to be is much smaller than the widest point of the deck, and putting on bigger trucks will make the truck stick out way too much. Now for shapes like these, where the front is very wide but then tapers into a smaller measurement as it goes to the back, generally people like to match the truck width with the narrowest width of the area where the hanger is. Now personally, I measure both of these areas, for the front and the back, and I pick the truck size that's in between. So for example, if the front area is 9 inches wide, but the back area is 8.5 inches wide, typically I would personally use an 8.75 truck, just because that's the in-between size. But if you get a measurement where there isn't an in-between size, so let's say the front is 9.75 wide and the back is 9.25 inches wide, I would say pick the closest matching truck to the narrowest width. So in this case, it will be a 9-inch truck. Now what about more modern shapes like egg shapes? The same principle pretty much applies, but there's a lot less thinking, since typically these sorts of shapes are more symmetrical. Usually with shapes like these, you can just pick the truck size that's one size lower than the listed size on that deck. So for example, if you have a 9-inch egg like this Black Label Elijah Ackley egg deck that's 9 inches wide, you could use 8.25 trucks with these. If you have a 10-inch egg shape, typically 9-inch trucks would work. Measuring the area where the hanger lies is definitely still a good idea, just to make sure that you are putting on the correct size trucks. Now what about the brand of the truck? Is this going to matter at all? That is actually going to depend on the skateboard brand and the deck that you're looking at. Now some brands such as Peralta do the old school bolt pattern for the reissue decks. The bolt holes where the trucks are mounted to are spaced further apart compared to our more modern counterparts nowadays. The reason why they do this is to make that reissue period correct, so it's more accurate to when that deck was first released, but that means your truck options are very limited. You will need a 6-hole base plate truck that can accept both the new school mounting options and the old school mounting options, and only very few brands offer this in very specific sizes. Two brands that I know of would be Independent Trucks and Gullwing Trucks. But if you're dead set on using a very specific truck brand that doesn't offer this option, you will need to re-drill the deck, meaning you need to re-drill new holes into the deck, which I would not recommend if you are not familiar with power tools and woodworking. Some brands that do not offer this option would be Ace, Thunder, and Venture. Keep in mind that a lot of reissues don't use this old school pattern, but instead they use the modern new school pattern. Brands such as Santa Cruz, Dogtown, and Alva have this certain bolt pattern. Your best option will be to actually inspect the board in person to see if the board is using the new or old school bolt pattern, or look at the product description if you are looking at it online. The brand will also matter if you are trying to make a period correct board, such as a common board you would find in the 70s or the 80s. So an Alva 1977 board isn't going to have Venture trucks on it, and a Madrid board isn't going to have Ace trucks on it. But of course, you can ignore this part if making the board period correct is not your main concern, and you just want to build something that's going to suit your own personal preferences. Now the best thing you can do to figure out the brand and the size trucks you need for that very specific deck you're looking at is to go into your local skate shop to inspect and measure the deck in person, or give a call to that shop to have the workers inspect the deck and to hear their recommendations for what you should put on that deck. So that has been another video. If you think I missed anything or have any questions or anything like that, just leave them in the comments below, and as always, I will see you in the next one.